is shared equity?
Well, so shared equity is a collection of different types of housing choices that really span the continuum between rental housing and fee simple homeownership. And they include things like cooperative housing, which is typically in the multifamily area, to community land trusts and deed restricted housing. And the key thing that distinguishes all of them is that the price at sale is controlled and the price at resale is controlled. And it's controlled in such a way that affordability is maintained over time, in perpetuity over time, but it also allows for modest amounts of asset growth or wealth growth for the families who live in the homes. So, well, why shared equity is important, I think, is because it offers a housing choice that would not be available for most people that would come to that sector. Most of the families that would live in shared equity housing would likely end up in the rental market because they would not be able to find any kind of housing choice that would help them to build wealth. So for the average family who's thinking about kind of entering into the shared equity arrangement, their only other choice is likely to be rental. And in rental housing, they have very little ability to build wealth. So this is a really key feature. It actually gives people a stepping stone up. And what we've seen over time is that a lot of people who live in shared equity housing, like community land trusts, eventually move on to live in fee simple units that they can buy in the open market. You know, it's important to note that the foreclosure rate in land trusts, which are part of the shared equity homeownership market, was 1/30th of the foreclosure rates in the broader market, and this was just measured last month. And the reason for that is that homeowners that live in shared equity are prepared to be homeowners and to be stewards of their own homes and their own to manage their own lives in a better way. And that's the job of the affordability steward, who not only prepares the owners but also prepares the units and makes sure the units are up to snuff so that they don't get hit by unforeseen events like the failure of a heating system or the roof or the windows. And I think that this is kind of a key feature that we have in a partnership with the private sector, the public sector, and with the homeowner. We find a way to provide good housing and stable housing and housing that doesn't put families at risk like we've seen in the last 3-4 years. The most important aspect of the shared equity approach relative to policymakers is that I think it's the most responsible use of subsidy that we have. Once a subsidy is put into a unit, it stays there in perpetuity, and it's used to maintain affordability not just for the first owner but for every owner afterwards. And that's really, really important because it isn't a windfall for an owner who comes in and gets tens of thousands of dollars of down payment assistance to buy a home that it might not have been able to afford otherwise, and it's providing kind of a stability in the neighborhood, in the community in which the home is located, because the unit is both occupied and maintained and overseen by that affordability steward. So I would say that the key feature is obviously the best use of subsidy, but the other thing is that there is somebody there that's watching and managing the units, and that entity is also there in perpetuity. So if we're really going to grow shared equity to the scale that we think it deserves to grow, we're going to need a real public commitment to this. We're going to need to commit the public resources and the subsidy that's necessary to really provide affordable housing in perpetuity in all the cities and locations in our country. And to do that, we're going to have to also standardize the processes so that a shared equity becomes a normal choice among tenure choices for the average homeowner. They'll look at the houses in the market, they'll say, do we want to rent? Do we want to own, or do we want to own something in partnership with the public sector that's maintained as affordable in perpetuity, that also gives us the ability to build some wealth through our housing choice?